What's going on? My name is Joey, and I'm the founder of Universal CPA Review.
Okay, so now we're diving into our next scenario in the world of auditing comparative financial statements. In this scenario, we audited the current year financial statements, but another auditor audited the prior year financial statements. So we're reporting with predecessor auditors. So let's assume that we have two auditors, Detective Lucy as the current year auditor and Detective Susie as the prior year auditor. Their task is to ensure that the financial statements of Galbraith Dental Clinic are accurately presented for 2 consecutive years. So when it comes to predecessor auditors, the first thing that needs to come to your mind is how are we communicating the fact that Detective Susie audited last year's financial statements for Galbraith Dental? Right, this is important information, and somewhere within our audit report, we need to let financial statement readers know, hey, these are comparative financial statements we're showing you. We're showing you last year and this year's numbers. At first glance, the financial statement readers will assume, okay, that makes sense. They're both audited by Detective Lucy. This is what they're telling us. But Detective Lucy needs to say, not so fast. I actually didn't audit last year, right? Year 1. That was Detective Susie. So Detective Lucy must decide whether to present the audited financial statements that were audited by Detective Susie in her current year audit report. So there are 2 ways for the auditor to present this information to financial statement readers. And it all depends on whether or not the year 1 audited financial statements are being presented or they're not being presented. Okay, so another word that they could throw your way is whether they're being issued or not reissued. So let's start with scenario 1, where Detective Lucy decides to reissue Detective Susie's prior year audit report. So the question you need to ask yourself in this situation is, what should the prior year auditor do? Okay, let me reiterate that. You might be thinking, what should Detective Lucy, the current year auditor, do? She's the one doing the work in this audit engagement. But I actually meant what I asked in this question. The question you need to ask yourself is, what should the prior year auditor do if the financial statements are getting reissued?
You're probably here because you're ready to pass the CPA exams once and for all so that you can advance in your career and move on with your life. Let me be the first to tell you that I've been there and I feel your pain. But I'm also here to tell you that the CPA exam doesn't have to feel like such a maze, and there is a path to a passing score. So what are you waiting for? Don't waste any more time. Commit to the process because it will pay off. In my opinion, I say let's knock out the CPA exams once and for all.
And the reason that Detective Susie, the prior year auditor, should do extra work is because she wants to make sure that the numbers that are being presented are actually accurate. Right, if revenue reads $19 million in her audit report last year, she wants to make sure that Detective Lucy is reporting that same number. Okay, so point being is Detective Susie is going to do some legwork, and you need to know what she needs to do. She needs to read the statements for the current period, making sure that everything looks good. She needs to compare the audited statements with the current period statements. She needs to obtain a representation letter from the successor auditor detailing if their audit identified any significant issues affecting the financial statements reported by the predecessor auditor. And finally, she needs to talk to management, right? She needs to request a letter from management confirming any changes to previous representations or new events that might affect the updated financial statements, right? If there are any issues, then she wants to talk to management to find out why. So if the predecessor auditor is reissuing this report, on our end, we need to determine if the previously presented financial statements were still appropriate as issued. So what you need to know is how the predecessor auditor should date that report. If we take a look at this reissued report and determine that no revisions are needed, then we could just go ahead and use the original report date when reissuing that previous report, right? We're just going to go ahead and copy over the previous date. And if we decide that there are necessary revisions to the predecessor auditor's report, then in this case, we will need to dual date the report. So let me give you an example. As Lucy reviews the financial statements of the previous year, she finds that the principles used in the current year are still applicable, and the statements do not require any revisions. Therefore, she decides to reference Susie's original report in her new report for the current year. But let's say, for example, during her audit, Lucy discovers a significant error in the previous year's financial statements related to inventory. Right, this is something that Susie might have missed. So in this case, the report needs to be dual dated. So let's assume that the original audit report date was March 15th. She needs to keep that date to represent the current year audit report date to showcase when the report was completed. Okay, but we need a new date for when we made this discovery and when this date was being updated. So a new date for February 20th, let's assume, is now being added to show when the report was completed and the revision is made due to the discovered error. Okay, so that was if the report is being reissued. In scenario number 2, when it comes to predecessor auditors, we need to understand what we need to do if we're not reissuing that prior year report. Okay, so if it's not reissued, does that mean we're just going to present year 1 numbers without letting anyone know that we didn't audit them? No, it does not. So in this case, we still need to disclose that the financial statements for year 1 were audited by someone else, Detective Susie, and if we're not reissuing that report, then we're simply going to add an other matter paragraph, assuming this is a non-issuer, an explanatory paragraph if it was an issuer. All right, so pull out that cheat sheet and note that this is the matter that we're now drilling into. So if the prior year report is not reissued, then you need to know what is included in the other matter paragraph. Right, this is question number 2. What specifically is being included in this paragraph? All right, so we need to include that the financial statements of the prior period were audited by a predecessor auditor. We need to disclose the type of opinion expressed by the predecessor auditor in the prior year and the reason for any modifications to the opinion if necessary. We also need to disclose the nature of any emphasis of matter, other matter, or explanatory paragraph included in the predecessor auditor's report. And we need to disclose the date of the predecessor auditor's report. So as you can see, everything included in this other matter paragraph is talking about the predecessor auditor. So if you see a multiple choice question, or if you see this within a task-based simulation, they're almost guaranteed to try to trip you up by including information about the current year in this other matter paragraph. All of the current year information has already been included somewhere within the opinion paragraph for the current year audit report. Right, remember, this other matter paragraph is demonstrating extra information. And so it makes sense that that extra information will be inclusive of this prior year audited information. So your buzzwords for this other matter paragraph will be prior, right, for prior period, or predecessor for the predecessor auditor.